the history of storytelling. To understand the history and art of storytelling, we have to understand the development of mankind, the development of the linguistics, and a general story around the form of storytelling, which is first humans, which make human are the only species that have this form storytelling, and it is one of other unique features human have, other major distinction humans have with other animals, as far as we have understand the organism in animal kingdom and plant kingdom, and the organisms unicellular organisms or multicellular organisms, we have understood that humans are um, uh, only beings who does this practice of storytelling. Uh, Others do not sometimes don't even bother, and sometimes they also share. They also have communications and communication channel uh, where through they communicate. But as far as we understand, we don't think that they have this strange or abstract art of storytelling. And in initially, I think the development of language leads to the development of storytelling, leads to the development of literature in particular. But the humans had language initially, and humans were being able to communicate with each other. And first, as common sense points out to that, if if we if human tried initially, they might have failed a lot in communicating themselves. There were lot of misunderstanding. But as we have come far into the into the um, into the development of mankind, we started to have words for particular situation, particular event, particular thing, and that's why it leads to the development of vocabulary also. And grammar came much later into the picture as far as linguistics is concerned. So I think when we and the so there is a development language, and the development language, when humans started were able to communicate with themselves and others, they it gave some a strange and um, abstract room for the development of storytelling, which is initially to understand the literature, to understand the development of storytelling. We have to make distinctions in literature, which is the obvious are to make the distinctions of what is prose and what is poetry, and other major distinction you have to make is non-fiction and fiction. So if you think about it a little bit, you would understand that poetry must have came first, and prose was a later development of human mind, because prose need a lot of thinking and a lot of abstraction. You also need a lot of imagination. You also need imagination and abstraction in poetry too. But poetry comes more easily to the people who can write poetry. It's something. Being a poet is difficult compared to being a writer, but the people who can write, who can write poetry, it comes very naturally to them. It's something that is very tough to learn. All the people learn it with this technology and stuff around us, and with all the literature we have. So, understanding the development uh, of the storytelling, which came of literature, and literature came of the development of the language, and we made the major distinctions between the prose and the poetry, and the fiction and non-fiction. And the first form the storytelling took place, obviously, was poetic non-fiction. That got to bed because initially I don't think human used their imagination as with anything, because which means using your imagination means blatantly is practice the art of lying, which I don't think humans very surreptitiously that good at lying, and they were not. So I think the first form it took was poetic nonfictions. It might have been somebody was telling us even or a situation they were in, or a story that they were composing, or try to communicate something to somebody else, and it might have become some non-fiction piece, something that really happened, and try to turn that around, to try to turn them around into a poetic, and using the words very beautifully, and uh, using the rhythm, and using the different tones, and so I think it was that the first form storytelling obviously took place was poetic nonfiction. But later into the development of the mankind, humans learned uh, um, other things, which was by that time they also had working knowledge of grammar, or and they had expanded their vocabulary, and it became much richer. And now that happened, storytelling became this is exploded and became a major event in human history, because if you look at the earlier text, they are as rich, they are as interesting, they are as um, um, they're as exotic, and they're as euphoric as we think anything storytelling takes place, because storytelling now has taken multiple form. It has taken the form of music. It has taken the form of poetry, prose, or it is in the form of writing, and movies, and so it became everything. So first it was poetic nonfiction. Then when humans used their imagination, it might have become poetic fiction, and much later came nonfiction prose, which is nonfiction prose, you can say, where they're writing autobiography or writing biography of someone, memoirs. That is a much later development of human mind. It's the if you look, let's look at the earliest text, and if you take there are two major there are many major text, and if you look at look at in the Greek mythology, and there is the text of Odyssey and Iliad. Iliad is a obvious poetry, and Odyssey is also poetry, but it's not really, because uh, it was it was it had to be poetry, because when it was dictated, it wasn't published or written much later into compared to what when it was composed. And to remember a story, it is far easier to remember in the form of poetry than it is to remember it in the form of prose, because to remember a story, or to communicate a story in the form of the prose, you need much richer vocabulary, and you need much words to be able to do so. And but I think as we came into this into the development of humankind, everything started become more abstract. It's like a point. It started as a point, and then it started taking a major. It gave rise to other branches. It's like a tree, and it's try to become everything it could. Um, and that's why it taken multiple forms, and even among them, it has taken a multiple genres. And so if you look at the earliest text in the literature, as one of the earliest texts in the literature is Mahabharata, and Ramayana. If you look at the Mahabharata, because Mahabharata is it has uh, all the elements and characteristics of a great um, epic, which is it has heroes, it has villain, it has a motivation for heroes to fight the villains. It has gods, it has humans, it has battle, it has in the end compassion, and it has repentance. Everything. It has a happy ending. So it has all the characters of a good epic, and so that would say that kind of like gives us the hint, and it indicates that yes, human might have been very talented even back then, because I don't think the epic of Mahabharata is any less interesting than the any other epic that existed in modern literature. And then you look at the Ramayana. Ramayana takes a more idealist form of literature. It also has heroes and villains as well, but the hero this time is very idealistic, and he is the one who follows the rule. He says what his elders uh, expect him to do, and he prays to gods. And also had, so the development of the Ramayana is earlier than the development of the Mahabharata, because uh, it is understood that if you are in a position of understanding the literature, the story itself doesn't give you much to deal with, because human minds is the one other thing that is great about the human, or probably a problem, is that it gets tired very early. It wants to expand its horizon. It wants new thing. It wants new variations. It don't want to stick. It hates human mind hates repetition of anything, whether how good that could be. It And the one example you can have for yourself is that if you listen to a particular music audio, you or a particular music audio you or particular song, you will get tired of it very soon, because your brain is getting tired of it, because the human mind doesn't like repetition. It hates repetitions. And so when you listen to song first time and you like it, somehow you can connect to the lyrics, or somehow there is a great melody or great music in it, then your minds want to have that same level of dopamine again, but it doesn't hit the same level of dopamine again. It might approximately reach that level, but as you keep listening to the same particular music, uh, the bar will go down, and after a while you will hate the song, and you will don't want to listen to this song. It's something like that happens to human brain. That's why new inventions happens all the time, because if telling a story in this way is all right and everybody's happy with it, why nothing nothing new will ever exist, nothing new ever will be created, because we are we are okay with it. Then the problem is that uh, understanding the modern literature, and the modern literature is it has taken a lot of forms. It has modern storytelling, uh, to be more correct, saying that it has taken a lot of forms. It has taken, as I've just pointed out, you know, the the story in the book is also depicted as a story in the movie, and sometimes a music video, or you know, the Japanese literature has this great form of storytelling, which is manga, where they portray the characters, which means they also have art and these drawings in the with the dialogues and everything, like kind of comics. So I think the the point was that if you want to understand the the complexity, you know, of a story. So let's talk about the structure of the story. I was a big fan of stories, and yeah, we all were big fan of stories when we were child. And the one thing you see in a story is some conflict that is being resolved, or the treatment of that conflict in the story, whether that's a short story, novella, or a novel, or any other. If you even are watching a movie, what happens is that human mind wants to get that uh, problem solved. You know, whatever conflict uh, the character and the protagonist is having in the story, we want that character to overcome that problem, because something strange about human mind, why it uh, it kind of like treat itself that way. It's very strange because it also becomes a pattern. It's a pattern in human mind that is very recognizable, that humans um, want a story to end, and not end particularly to end, but to hero to have overcome whatever conflict he's having. But then you point the fact to to the writer and to the composer of the story, and you say, my maybe it is he is writing a story in a way that his hero or his protagonist, his characters have these conflicts that are to be resolved. But if you look at the earlier story, and you think, was it the case even back then? And like, I was talking about Odyssey, Iliad, Ramayana, and Mahabharata, but let's go back and you know, what was the story initially, and was there a conflict in the story initially? And and the obvious point is, yes, there was. Because even if I were to uh, tell you a story, a real life story, I'm only telling you the story because there was a conflict somewhere in back of. For example, if I'm dictating a story to you from a time when I was, let's just say, 10 years from now, I'm only will be telling the story if it has something interesting, and something that interesting is resolving a conflict, not in that obvious sense. Sometimes very often it becomes some other thing, but we are resolving conflict. Because if I were to tell you that I was traveling from point A to point B, and I just sat in an automobile and drove it all through from point A to point B, and you will be like, oh, well, okay, but what's the point of the story? And yeah, I will say, well, that's a story, but nobody wants to listen or to read a story like that, because it's not a story. It's an event that happened, but it's not a story. So story needs a conflict, which is which is strange again, because even knowing humans wrote all, even knowing the first writer of the story, or first writer of the person who was dictating a story in any form, shape, or form, um, unintentionally was aware of the fact that that the one fundamental art of a story is fundamental element or characteristic of story is a conflict. And if you put your head around that thought for a while, and you still, that's a very strange thing. And then it points to the why human minds wants to resolve a conflict, because we humans also subconsciously believe, or if you have thought about it, then you uh, can might be able to agree with it, that life has this conflict always. Like, you never are out of conflicts. Your life is full of conflicts always. And to have these resolves to those conflicts, not particularly to each and everybody's conflict, but having that having that relief that yes, there is a way to resolve a conflict, even if the conflict is unresolvable. There's nothing you can do about it, and there is nothing anybody can do about it. Even then, we want to resolve a conflict. It slightly, I will probably stop myself to say that, but I think it leads when a conflict is unresolvable, we move towards religion, and that gives that element of religion to humans. You know, religion particularly came out of that uh, uh, that that conflict. Not able to solve a conflict is also a conflict, and and to have the relief that somehow this conflict can be resolved is turned towards religion. Now, the it it also the storytelling also poses itself as a relief, as I've just said. But if you look at some stories in modern literature, and when I'm saying literature, I'm trying to encompass every piece of literature that can exist in comic books and in animated shows and movies, and particularly movies of that those are not animated, writings, books, poetry, prose, music videos, everything, probably audio, whatever. It encompasses all the things. The storytelling pose itself as a as a necessity, right? Humans, when a child is born, what it wants to be nursed, it wants to be uh, it wants to be nursed, and it wants to be able to grow, and wants the love of people around the child. And the next best thing, the very next thing the child wants is a story. And we all have grew up listening to story by our elders, right? And I never felt more relief having to listen to a story than when I was a child. And because those stories were purely came out of our the purely came out of the hearts of the people who really loved us and and adored us. And I remember when I was in first grade, there was this teacher who used to, tell a lot of stories, and we used to gather around her, the whole class, and we always she was supposed to teach us the language Hindi language, and we used to surround her and just to listen to her story every single day. And the very many stories she told were like Alibaba and 40 Thieves, and there was this one story that she used to tell about this. Uh, there was a lot of story around greed and love and compassion, and the major themes of major emotions of human life. So it was that also. But if you s- look at the modern art, sometimes you see a story where the conflict remains unresolved, which I think one example of that story is Manchester by the Sea. It's that one movie that doesn't resolve, or actually, the, first initially we had the um, we had the we were very uh, intentionally doing this thing where every story ends with a happy ending. Hero wins, the villain loses, and the victory of good over evil. So everything was that. But later what start happening is that that's not really the case. It happens in humans, in real human life. Then we started to see the conflict being resolved, uh, but the people who were resolving the conflict started to have guilt about it, and which is like, um, which if you look at the story of, uh, if you look at the Epic of Mahabharata, you see that in the end they are kind of like repenting and grieving, and why we fought this war, because it's, everybody is, is gone now, and they will never come back, and we were just fighting for our land, and now look what we have done. And now the conflict is resolved in the epic, but the hero and the the obvious people who are resolving conflict are not very much happy about it, and it ends in this curse, most time. And then you see started to see these movies and started to read the stories where conflict remains unresolved, or either there is an end of the conflict and there is the end of the person who's supposed to solve the conflict even before the conflict is resolved. So there are a lot of abstractions that takes place. It's like that one point, and from there it can take, very many paths. So which also means that there must be some way of telling a story we haven't yet explored. Uh, so that's it.